Hi guys, Real Talk with Tracy. Hope you guys are doing well. What do I want to talk about today? I want to talk about my adoption. I was adopted when I was 18 months old, and it was kept a family secret. And I was adopted by my aunt and uncle. Even the birth certificate was changed, so there'd be no way of me knowing that my aunt was really my mother and my mother was really my aunt. So my natural mother, my birth mother, was 12 years younger than her sister, and her husband left, and she had no way of supporting me. And my aunt really wanted to adopt me. She was having problems having children, and she wanted to adopt me. And so she talked her sister into allowing me to be adopted. And then after the papers were signed, it's like, you're Aunt Janice now. Like, you can never tell your daughter that you're her natural mother. You're going to be the aunt and I'm the mommy. And that's the way it went. And for many, many years, I'd say it went pretty well. She was Gloria. She was a loving mother. She was a very narcissistic, insecure person that needed a lot of reassurance. So every day it was like, who's the best mommy in the world? Who's the best mommy? Who's the best mommy? Who's the best mommy? I'd be like, you are. And she goes, yes, I am. Who's the best mommy in the world? You are. You're my mommy. You're the best mommy in the world. So this was like a constant thing. Her husband, who was my father, really my uncle, very critical guy. I want to say sadistic in the point of him tickling me till I was in pain and yelling and screaming and hitting him, and him just pushing me down and laughing. So these kind of memories are very in the front of my mind as an adult. I am 61. And when I think of my uncle that raised me, a lot of things stand out. When I look at pictures and I see him at the beach with me, showing me the sea anemone and the tide pools, I think of what a cute picture that is and how cute that is. But what I remember is feeling so uncomfortable with him and him pushing me down and laughing and me trying to stand up and him standing over me and pushing me down and tickling me. And he was very controlling. And I was more her little trophy, her little girl. And I had all the presents for Christmas. I had all that stuff. But, and I'm sure they tried to the best of their ability. But at 12, when my aunt that was raising me had a nervous breakdown, and she became very dangerous, and she was drinking a lot, and she was carving these animals. She was an artist, and she was an amazing artist, and she was carving these animals at the house, and she was in the garage, and she was using a hand sander. I don't know if you've ever seen a hand sander, but it has like a round head on it, and it spins really fast. And she got in an argument with her husband, my uncle dad, right? And tried to swipe it and hit his face. And almost she could have taken off his face with this sander. So he leaves, and he leaves me with this complete mess of a woman. She is drinking all day. All of her like new friends that are coming over, they're coking it up and doing all sorts of drugs and everything. She's bringing men home from the nightclub she just met in the middle of the night. She put me in a lot of danger. And it was really, really scary. And she threatened me that if I ever told my grandparents, that she would just pull off my limbs. She'll just break them off one by one, you know? So I was very scared of her. And I finally went to some teachers and I ran away and I went into the foster care system. I went into the foster care system, which was the first time I felt like I could breathe and actually go to sleep and not go to sleep with one eye open, wondering like who's coming into my bedroom. Is she going to be home? Am I safe? Is someone going to try to break in? Who knows? I'm here alone by myself. It was comforting, actually, I was in 2 different foster homes for a short time. It was comforting. And then my dad, uncle came to get me and he wanted the house that was in a lake in California. We had a beautiful little tiny 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house that's probably worth now like $1.7 million. They bought it, I think, when I was 8 years old for like $32,000. And it overlooked this beautiful lake and we had a beautiful gazebo and we had parties and it looked like, to all the outside people, looked like a fairy tale. Looked like a fairy tale. And a lot of being at the lake for me was a fairy tale because it was also an escape. Being with just the bumblebees and fishing and going out on the sailboat and walking around with my friends. And then when my aunt would leave, sometimes for a week at a time, I would be in that house all by myself. And it was really scary. And her boyfriends would try to get in the house and get me to open the door, which I would not do. I went through a lot. And after the foster home and after living with my dad, uncle, and feeling completely unseen and unappreciated, and him leaving on Fridays to be with his girlfriend now, well, he's not with her anymore, but anyway, his wife, and then coming back on Mondays, and he was cheating on her all the time. And I just didn't have any good examples, you guys. I didn't have good examples of what parents should be. In the very beginning, it looked like a fairy tale. And my mother would say, like, who's the prettiest girl? Who's the prettiest girl in the whole world? I'd be like, me, I am, which is a total lie. I mean, obviously, I'm cute maybe, but I wasn't the prettiest girl in the whole world. And that's what she would say to me all the time. Who's the prettiest girl in the whole world? I am, you know, and then he'd be on the other side when he would get mad, yelling at me with his finger. He would punch his finger into my chest really hard. I remember living with him and him yelling at me and just, you know, I want to say almost like he was screwing me with his finger. Is that a weird analogy? It was very overwhelming and it was painful. And when I would grab his finger, he would be like, don't touch me. And he would literally just be pounding his finger into my chest. So it was awful. And luckily, I wound up leaving and getting back in touch with who else but my mother aunt that was way out there. And I went back and stayed with her for a while, and she was a nightmare. And then I turned up on his doorstep because I had nowhere to go. And then finally, I met my husband on a dance floor. He's from Nicaragua. I met this man wearing a zoot suit who became my hero in my life. And I moved in with him, and 2.5 years later, we got married. And I've been with my husband 40 years. And with all the shit I went through, it was worth it if it took all that for me to meet my husband, because he's an amazing person. He's my best friend. He is my hero. But anyway, back to being adopted and raised by narcissists. So I still have a lot of anger. Gloria died in 2020. I hadn't seen her in about 35 years. I had gone to see her a couple years after I got married because I was having trouble in the middle of the night crossing the apartment to get a glass of water. I would picture her with an axe sitting on the couch in my apartment because she threatened me so many times. And I was afraid that she would possibly, like in her drug or alcoholic state, kill me, do something to me. So I was afraid. And I went to counseling, but I wanted to see her. So, excuse me, I was working for L'Oreal and I was making a lot of every other week trips and earning a lot of points. And I had flown my cousin in to go with me. And we went and found where she was living in this little dumpy apartment with her boyfriend at the time, who was 20 years younger, hippie type, long hair, like some throwback from the 60s. The apartment was dirty. There was dishes piled up in the sink. She had a pit bull, which was jumping all over me and making me very nervous, even though I love dogs. And she was just blubbering and crying and telling me she didn't know that the oven was on when she put her hand on the stove. She thought the oven was off, and she was using all these analogies to try to explain to me what a screwed up person she was, and telling this guy, this is my kid. And I finally saw her for the pathetic person she was. And actually, instead of hating her, I wound up having sympathy, some kind of compassion for her. But I realized that she was so mentally screwed up, and she had threatened to do bad things to me, that I did not want her in my life. I remember her telling me that she was in the army and that she was raped in the army by a woman. And she got really close and grabbed my arm really tight. And I said, what happened? And she said, I killed her. I killed her with my bare hands. And then she got really close to me and she grabbed my arm and squeezed it really tight. And she looked at me and she goes, but I would never hurt you. Don't worry. And that's when I got the F out of there. I am like, she is out of her freaking mind. I need to get out of here. And so I didn't see her, for like 37, 38 years. My husband never met her, which was great. She never reached out. She never knew me as an adult. She never tried to get better. She never got better. And she sold the house that I loved, that I would have one day possibly inherited. And I feel kind of screwed over. I feel screwed over because I got her as a mother. My father-uncle left me in a very unsafe situation with this woman who was nuts and went off and left me. And I don't talk to him anymore. And I have forgiven him over and over, and I just can't anymore. He is so rude and crude and says hurtful things to me, and I just don't want anything to do with him. There's no reason. There's no reason if somebody is constantly hurting you, and it doesn't have to be physical, it could just be emotional, but there's no reason that you have to put up with it. There's no reason you have to accept it. There's no reason you deserve it, ever, to be treated that way. And I could go on for hours telling you stories, but I won't right now. What I want to say is I'm really angry that my parents were so effed up. I am sad that they were the ones that adopted me. I am sad that I wasn't adopted by a wonderful, incredible family that could just love me. And a mother, I would tell my friends, I would just be happy with a fat woman who's the cashier at Kmart that makes cookies. Just a kind person. She didn't have to look a certain way. She didn't have to have money. She just had to be a loving, ethical person with a good heart. But I got saddled with this. And when my aunt died, she didn't remember me in her will. I mean, she couldn't have left a letter. I have my own money. We've saved quite a bit of money. My husband and I are doing fine, but it shows the lack of care for me and any kind of empathy or compassion for all the crap that she put me through. Many, 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 many times. That she put me through. And she left to her husband that she finally married, this younger guy that was 20 years younger than her, who was a bad alcoholic, drug addict. He had a DUI. He couldn't drive. He was a loser. She left him a house worth $650,000, which was all paid off. And he got all of her money, all of her stuff. And he put the house on the market 2 days after she died and took all the money and went to Mexico. And so there's my mother's legacy. He never posted anywhere an obituary. He never contacted anyone to let anyone know she died. I'm talking like she may still be getting Social Security payments. I don't know. But I don't even know if there was ashes. I don't know. There was never anything. There was never an obituary. It's like she didn't exist almost. It's like all the pain I went through from this woman, because there's no obituary anywhere. It's almost like, did she exist? Oh, but she did. She existed. I'm going to tell you what happened the night she was raped. I was living there, and it was when I went back. We were having a party at Malibu Lake, and there was a lot of bikers, that type, bikers, different people that she didn't know, that people invited people that invited people, because the more was better. And she was making her famous, big pots of pasta and meatballs, and she was a great cook. She didn't teach me how to cook because she thought I'd make a mistake. My grandmother taught me how to cook, but she would cook, and it was really good. And she got really drunk. She got so wasted. And she was drinking plum wine all day like she usually did. And she was wearing tight jeans and a little halter top with her stomach showing. And I was 12 or 13, and she was like 30 years older than me. So you can do the math. And she would take a swig of wine, and then she would pass it to another man with her mouth. And she thought that was just so sexy. Yummy. And she got so drunk that they had to carry her up these stairs that went up. It must have been, I want to say 20 or 30 stairs that went up the side of the hill to where our house was. And then more stairs to get into the front door. And then they put her to bed. And I was awake and I watched her pass out and I watched these people carry her. And I had 2 friends over from high school. And it was late at night and we're listening to music and someone's knocking at the door. And the door was wood and there was a very heavy metal knocker and there was a little, I want to say it looked like a castle. There was a peephole, to open. And I see one of the guys that she was doing this wine exchange with and acting like a slut around. And he said, "Can you let me in? My car broke down the street. I really need to use the phone." And I said, "No." And he's like, "Where's your mother?" And I'm like, "She's sleeping." So I closed that little thing and I had to go to the bathroom. And my friend, Julie, let him in the house. And as I was in the bathroom, he walked through the house. He went in her bedroom and he started taking off her clothes. And she was completely unconscious. And he started raping her. And I come out and Julie's like, "Oh, I let that guy in." And I'm like, "Where is he? Why did you let him in?" And I open the door and I see this man raping my mother, who's completely passed out. And I ran across the street to a house where a man named Jack lived. And I knew he had a shotgun. And I went screaming down the street, asking him to come and save my mother from this man who was raping her. And he came in with guns blazing, and he went into the bedroom and got this guy, and the guy left. I don't know if the police were called. I don't know if there was a report done. I don't know. I remember her staggering out and being very confused by what was even happening because she was still so drunk. But that was a very vivid memory in my life. I am not sure if that was before I put myself into the foster home. It may have been. But that left me feeling very scared all the time about everything. So anyhow, now that I'm that age when your parents pass away and so many of my friends are getting huge inheritance because they had beautiful families and parents that loved them and thought about their future, I'm getting nothing. And you guys, it's not even really about the amount of money. It's about the fact that nobody protected me. It is an analogy that nobody looked out for my best interest. My arms are getting tired because I'm actually holding my phone. Nobody looked out for me. My uncle father, he finally had prostate cancer and couldn't have sex anymore. And because of that, and I figured if that ever happened to him, he'd finally get married. And he did. He married his longtime girlfriend that he cheated on all the time. Anyway, he married her and they lived together for 30 years. And he worked the whole time paying off her house that her ex-husband had left. They had a mortgage. He paid it off over 30 years. He never once said, let's leave my daughter 10%. I've been with you 30 years, and I have been contributing to paying off your mortgage for 30 years. I know you have 2 sons, and I know you had this house before we got married, but you had a huge mortgage, and I helped pay this down. Let me leave my daughter something, like even 10%. Just something so my daughter will know that she was loved, that I loved her. No. And you know what he said to me when we talked as adults a few years ago about the adoption? He said, well, we adopted you. I mean, no one wanted you. Yeah, we had to adopt you. No one wanted you. So what kind of a a-hole says things like this? Even if he thought that, who does that? And then wants to wiggle back into my life so I can take care of him and be his chauffeur while he's old and sick and his wife kicked him to the curb and he lives in an old little mobile home. Yeah. If you're watching this, you damn well know why we don't talk anymore. Because you just don't know how to be a loving, kind person. And I refuse to ever be anybody's doormat ever again. So, I've been wanting to kind of tell the story for a while. I've opened up a lot more on my podcast than I have on my YouTube videos. But if this will help somebody to get past the fact that you are a valuable human being, God loves you. God loves you just as much as he loves each one of his children. And if you got saddled with a raw deal and a bad deal like I did, that's not a reflection on you. Honestly, it's not. You're not defective. There's nothing wrong with you. Thank you for letting me get this out. I appreciate it. I will do more videos and you can comment and I will write you back. I hope this helps you in some way. I am sending you love and light. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful week. Do something nice for yourself. Stop being a doormat for anyone. Nobody deserves that. I'm going to ask you a favor, and that's to subscribe to my YouTube channel and to share this with your friends and loved ones if you think my story will help someone. Okay. Bye for now. Bye, guys.